Let's discuss the origin and development of Islamic scholastic theology, Kalam or Ilm al-Kalam. Islam initiated philosophical reflection without directly referencing the Hellenic thought. This is evident in the early tradition known as Ilm al-Kalam, meaning the science of the word, and this would require delving into the concept of the Quran as Kalamullah or the word of God. Additionally, Kalam as Islamic scholastic theology particularly promotes rational understanding of creator and creation. Often shortened to Kalam, it is loosely translated as the rational theology. Kalam primarily involved theological debates about the correct interpretation of Islamic revelation, frequently using rational intuitions and arguments. And hence, consequently, Kalam is often contrasted with philosophy. Islamic scholasticism or Kalam is characterized by the rational dialectics applied to the theological concepts. It is not about the mystical knowledge, irfan, or the science of the heart, which the Shiite Imams first discussed. Philosophers like Al-Farabi, Averroes, and Mullah Sadra al-Shirazi noted that mutakallimun are primarily apologists. They are apologists because they focus not on proving truth, but on defending their traditional religious beliefs using theological arguments. Such a role is essential for any religious community, including the Shiite, although their Imams advised against the focusing solely on Kalam. This is because mystical theosophy, irfan, makes hermeneutically rather than dialectically avoiding intellectualism. The early jurists, fuqaha, and traditionist muhaddithun, despite their literalism, recognized the logical inconsistencies in the sacred texts and the challenges of interpretations. However, theological schools began to form. The debates on the dogma emerged only when more significant issues arose beyond textual analysis. Political factors, Judeo-Christian influences, and Greek philosophical ideas accelerated this process further. Early theological controversies primarily focused on the free will and predestination, qadar. Notable early theologians discussing this included Ma'bad al-Juhani, Ghailan al-Damashqi, Wasil ibn Atta, Yusuf al-Asfari, and Amr bin Ubayd. Hasan al-Basri, central to many other later theological developments, often upheld the predestination, though some sources suggest that he believed in the free will. The proponent of the free will, which we may call Qadaris, faced significant opposition partly due to the political implications. Ma'bad and Ghailan were executed by Umayyad Caliphs Abdul Malik and Hisham as their free will doctrine challenged the Caliph's authority and stability of the political order. The belief in free will implied that the Caliphs should be held accountable for their unjust actions rather than attributing them to the God's decree. Although some Umayyad Caliphs like Muawiyah II, Yazid III leaned towards the Qadri view, the movement never gained widespread popularity during the Umayyad period. Orthodox critics against free will advocates were bolstered by the allegations of the Greek of the Christian influences. Ash-Shahrastani noted that the early theological discussions on the fundamentals of the belief were influenced by the Greek philosophical elements. Additionally, there were claims of the Christian influence, particularly in Damascus, where interactions between the Muslims and Christian theologians were common. For example, a tract by Theodore Abu Qurra, a Christian bishop, summarized a discussion on the free will between a Christian and a Muslim. Conversations between the Ma'bad and Christian from Iraq named Sausan were also reported by later authors. These early theological debates required sophisticated dialectical tools, which Muslims eventually adopted from the Greeks by the 8th century. And due to the limited information, especially from the later hostile sources, it is challenging to fully reconstruct the theological landscape of this period. The Qadari movement became more refined when it was absorbed into the Mu'tazilites, the first major school of theology which gained prominence in the 9th century and was strongly supported by Abbasid Caliph al-Mamun. According to tradition, the Mu'tazilite school of thought was founded by Wasil ibn Atta, a former pupil of Hassan al-Basri, a key figure in Islamic jurisprudence, asceticism and theology. Wasil's disagreement with his teacher centered on the issue raised by the Kharijites, whether a Muslim who committed a grave sin or kabira remained a Muslim or not. The Kharijites said no, while the Murji'ah took a more lenient stance. Wasil introduced a middle ground, suggesting that a grave sinner occupied intermediate positions between infidelity, kufr and faith, iman, and should be called a grave sinner or a fasiq. This distinctions between infidel, sinner and believer, although not revolutionary, highlighted the challenge theological extremists faced in maintaining the balance. Wasil's moderation extends to the political issues such as the legitimacy of the sinful caliphs and Muhammad, peace be upon him, rightful successors. He reportedly withheld judgment due to the insufficient evidence. Wasil's weave on the other key Mu'tazilite doctrines are not well documented. However, there was an early link between the Mu'tazila and Jahm bin Safwan, the founder of the Jabriya school of thought, which emphasized the divine omnipotence and the absolute determination of the human actions by the God. Some theologians, later identified as Jabarites or the Jabriya school of thought or determinists, share this weave, which became associated with the orthodox belief. A later source reports a controversy between Jahm and a follower of Wasil ibn Atta. Despite the differences, Jahm and the Mu'tazila agreed on certain points, such as the creation of the Quran, leading some to consider Jahm as a Mu'tazila. Jahm also believed that God's attributes were identical to his essence, a key Mu'tazilite doctrine. However, this weave that heaven, hell and their occupants will eventually be destroyed was contrary to the Mu'tazilites' belief in the eternal punishment and reward. Jahm's literal interpretation of the Quranic verses about God's eternity and the appreciability of everything else set him apart from the Mu'tazila. And despite the differences, both Jahm and Wasil ibn Atta addressed similar theological issues that divided the Muslim community in the early 8th century. Although it's challenging to fully trace the development of the Mu'tazilite movement from the Wasil's time to the loss of the many early writings, but enough survives to outline their doctrines, their teachings during the peak time in the first half of the 9th century. Most authorities agree that Mu'tazilites focus on the two key concepts, divine justice and unity, claiming to be their true exponent. While other issues were debated, many could be logically reduced to these two principles. A leading Mu'tazilite authority from the late 9th century identified 5 basic tenets of their creed: justice, unity, inevitability of God's threats and promises, the intermediary positions, and the injunctions of the right and prohibition of the wrong. And the latter 3 derive logically from the Mu'tazilite doctrine of God's all-encompassing justice. The Mu'tazilites' emphasis on vindication God's justice led them to rationally address the issues arising from the Quran's portrayal of God's unlimited sovereignty and engage in ethico-theological debates about the free will. While the Quran affirms God's justice and denies his injustice, many verses emphasize God's overwhelming power, suggesting little room for any power other than God's. Concepts like divine guidance, the sealing of the hearts, appointed terms, provisions, and the book of faith paint a picture of God's arbitrary power, challenging the notion of the human responsibility. This is enough for today, and stay tuned for more in the next episode. Thanks for watching.